Coming as somewhat of a surprise this year, Square Enix actually released a playable demo, something that I kind of missed going back to the old days when Capcom unleashed the Lost Planet demo, but this one has been more of a roller coaster ride. I'm talking about Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin from Square Enix and Team Ninja. So to talk about this one though, I've brought along the one and only Audi Sorlie with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle headphones.
Yes, that you cannot see, I think, on this video. But yes, hey John, let me just say, there's a lot of chaos even in the title of this game.
Yeah, I had to look up the title and put it in front of me to make sure I got it right because it is a little convoluted. But this game has been a weird one, huh? Because it showed up during that conference, which was otherwise full of Marvel and mobile.
M&M.
Yes, exactly. And I guess a lot of people were dunking on it early on for the very plain character designs. And I can kind of see why. But at the same time, you know, looking at the gameplay footage, I was like, it's Team Ninja. They worked, obviously, beyond Ninja Gaiden. They worked on Nioh, which is an excellent Souls-like style game with its own sort of flair. And this seemed like it could be an interesting fit. And sure enough, they put up a demo that night, and it didn't work.
No, it did not.
For the first day or two, and then they patched it and fixed the problem, and here we are, and I've tested it, and this is what we're looking at now. So
this was a cherry on the top of the sundae for them, because we'll talk about the Square Enix conference in a later video, I think, but the fact that they dropped this demo and it didn't work on top of all these mobile-centric announcements, I think really hurt Square's position at this rather, quiet E3 overall.
Yeah, exactly. But let's start talking a little bit about the tech, and then we'll talk about the game itself, because there is a lot of good things to say about the actual game they're showing here. But it does feel early, which it is, I suppose. So yeah, I'm not actually sure which engine this is using to begin with. My first guess was perhaps they're using technology that they built for Nioh. It doesn't quite look like it's using anything off the shelf. Like, just the look of is unique. But at the same time, I also noticed, and maybe you agree, it kind of resembles the look of a late 2000s Unreal Engine 3 game, and its use of like extreme contrast and crushed blacks everywhere, and just this. Yes. It has this look to it that feels very much of the PS3 era.
Yeah, I definitely feel like this game needs to be played on like a 2005 plasma that is in your basement somewhere, because that's the only way these colors are gonna pop out the right way. But it's definitely, true. I mean, we say new game, but I have my theories that I believe this design and the game itself, I wonder if it has been in the system at Square Enix for a while and just kind of floating around, because from art direction to even the tech, it looks updated. It doesn't look necessarily next gen.
I do wonder about that. I mean, it is a cross-gen game. It is coming to last-gen platforms as well. And Nioh itself was not necessarily a powerhouse in terms of pushing technology, so I don't necessarily expect that here.
No, Nioh had very good art direction, though, I think. Very consistent.
It did. That is true. But I guess the weird thing is like other Team Ninja games as of late, it starts with the option to choose a performance mode or a sort of image quality mode, whatever they call it. And traditionally that would mean one is higher resolution with a slower frame rate, and the other is a lower resolution with a higher frame rate. But in this case, they're the same, basically. Effectively, no matter which mode you choose, it seems to run at 1080p. The only difference is that the HUD and the final output is 4K, so you get a crisp 4K HUD in the quality mode, but the actual 3D rendering is still done at 1080p. So the image quality is pretty blurry. Their AA is not that effective at cleaning up edges, but it is extremely soft, so it does have a strange look to it, which I think contributes to its older look in a way. And on top of that, it has kind of like the worst implementation of screen space reflections I've ever seen. It's just ugly the way they handle characters, occluding the scene. That combined with the crushed blacks of this area, it just looks really bad, I think. But that's not to say that there's not some nice things going on. I mean, it does play like Neo / Dark Souls. It has that same, you enter a large area, you're working your way through it. Eventually you unlock a shortcut like a ladder, which was very common in those games. You click the stick to lock onto your enemies. You're fighting them one by one using the R and I guess it's the R1 and R2 buttons. But there's more to the gameplay, which we'll talk about momentarily, but it does kind of follow that same formula. The problem is, in its current form, is that, so despite running at only 1080p, the frame rate is extremely unsteady.
Quite unsteady. Yes.
I didn't expect this, to be honest. So
as I was playing this, I was getting nervous on your behalf because it was so jumpy on the frame rate. I was like, I need to call John, make sure that he is okay, and you were.
It's fine. So I guess the thing is, whenever we talk about frame rate on a pre-release game like this, it's extremely important to understand that what we're showing here, this is just a point in time. This is the demo as it stands, and this is not passing judgment on the final product, because this is not the final product. And based on what happened with Neo, which improved a lot in the final product, I suspect we'll probably see the same thing here.
Yes, I was going to mention that Neo in the end did run pretty well.
I'm just surprised that even on like a next or current gen machine like this with visuals like this, that it's actually struggling to run well. So they definitely have a lot of work to do in terms of optimization, because right now it does target 60, but there's just constant drops below it that make it feel somewhat unstable and unpleasant to play at times.
Yeah, it seems that the effects is what's generally doing it. The blurring and then it seems to be dropping a lot.
So technically speaking then, I mean, the first impressions are not great. It's just, the character detail is okay, but the environments are fairly basic looking. I mean, they are open. There's not loading screens everywhere. You do have sort of free reign of this castle while trying to find chaos and kill chaos, which ultimately that's what you do at the end of this demo. So
the target is chaos,
which is interesting because
the goal is
when
chaos.
You look at this demo and you look at the trailer, pretty much everything shown was in the demo. So it's like we're seeing this tiny vertical slice of something, it feels like, and that's all they're showing right now. So I'd be curious to know how far along they really are in development, because it does still feel surprisingly early, but to release a public demo at this stage is kind of surprising as well.
Well, they did say that at least the concept of the game has been around since Dissidia, which when did this come out? Dissidia was like 2011, 2012?
It was before that.
Oh, it was even earlier than that. So
yeah,
but the concept can be many things. It can just be the idea of doing an origin story. An origin story to Final Fantasy in itself, I find somewhat puzzling. But that's not to say it doesn't work. It could be great, and I'm expecting some kind of dimension jumping characters or something, as that's all the rage these days.
We'll see what happens. But I guess gameplay wise, I'm fascinated by it, because fundamentally they have brought a lot of mechanics that we've seen before in games like Neo and of course Dark Souls. But they've introduced party members, which I didn't find to be especially useful, but it is interesting to have other characters that are AI controlled running alongside your character. And then they also have the whole magic system where you can essentially switch to a casting option, and there's a bunch of spells selectable via this wheel, and how long you hold the trigger seems to determine the strength of the attack. And then there's this whole system where you're taking down, I don't even remember the name of this yellow bar, and then you essentially drain their energy from that. And there's also the shield mechanics where you're essentially deflecting attacks, and there's a surprising amount of depth and complexity, and I've only sampled it, so I don't really have I haven't like mastered all of this, but I see potential there with the core mechanics in terms of like taking what they've done and expanding upon it in an interesting way, while introducing some of the job system elements that some Final Fantasy games have introduced in the past. I mean, essentially in the demo, you can switch between two different jobs by pressing triangle. So like you could be like a mage as one job and then like a warrior for the other one, or whatever they call it. So it's actually useful to be able to switch between sort of a damage dealer with your sword to magic user, depending on the scenario.
I think the magic system has a lot of potential, but as it is in the demo, it still needs some fine-tuning and balancing. It's a little bit too haphazard at the moment to kind of work the way it should.
You're right, but in this one area I was attacking these dogs, and there's a bunch of them that show up. It's the first time you encounter sort of a pack of enemies, and the first time I actually lost against them. And then I went back and I used water magic, but like the stronger Watera magic or whatever you call it, and they were all running at me. I hit them with this, and it took them all out in one go. And so it kind of highlighted to me the importance of having magic, where you wouldn't have typically been able to do something quite like that in like Neo, for instance, where you have an easily accessible spell that you can kind of pull out anytime if you have the energy for it, and take out a large group. And there's a bunch of different attacks and magic and things that are kind of focused on handling more enemies at once. So you're kind of going back and forth between one-on-one and dealing with crowds. So it does sort of expand the whole combat a little bit. I'm curious to see what they do with that.
What did you think of the inventory and equipment system?
Oh yeah, it seemed like you get a lot of equipment in this demo, right? It feels like you're just constantly picking it up, and you pick it up by pressing the touchpad, which feels very awkward. I felt, because you're always reaching your thumb over to click that down. But
yeah, so this system to me was, shall I say, too chaotic for me to really enjoy. I don't see the appeal of it either. It's just too much equipment and inventory to keep track of, and just in this little demo. So I don't know if they can kind of fine-tune this and lower the drop amount, or what they can do.
Might be for the demo, I don't know. But I hope they change that.
Yeah, it could be. But I really hope they change that, because that was, in this demo, gameplay-wise, was probably the one thing that kind of held it back the most for me, was this constant equipment.
At the same time, though, people complaining about Jack, his generic appearance. Once you start picking up gear, you can actually equip that, and it does show it within the game itself, and your character winds up looking completely different as a result.
Yes.
So it seems almost like he's designed as a blank slate out of the gate, and then you just start equipping things, and it quickly changes the design of the character.
This was probably the biggest surprise I had as I kind of booted this up, was the amount of customization that really wasn't mentioned or shown in the trailer. And it really seems like it would be one of the most fun aspects of the game. And as you mentioned, even in the demo, it's kind of apparent that this will be a larger part of the game. But as they're presented in the demo, these characters look like they just shopped at JCPenney.
Well, some of it, yes.
And maybe not the armors. I don't know what kind of armor you can buy at JCPenney, but at least the shirts.
Yes, the default outfit especially looks like that. So, but I guess that kind of sums up everything, and why we've, you look at everything from the technology to the gameplay systems to the concept, and I see potential in all of it. It is fun to play, and there's a good idea here, but it is very much in a rough state. It needs a lot of polish and work, and which is still to come, of course. But I kind of respect them putting a demo out in this state and sort of giving fans a chance to share their feedback.
Yeah, certainly when it was working, it was greatly appreciated. For me, I'm quite interested. I grew up with Final Fantasy, so the idea of an Origins title is quite appealing. Ys has had an Origin title as well. It's done very differently than this. My greatest concerns here are just the art assets and the general direction of the design and the characters. Even their face modeling and such, it still looks somewhat like an older gen title that has been updated for PS4. Not even the PS5, I'd say, but like a PS4 remaster of a PS3 game, and that doesn't bowl too well, maybe, but they still have a lot of time to update this.
Yep, I agree. But yeah, we just wanted to share our brief thoughts on this demo, as it is E3 week, and I thought it was interesting to check out, and I think it was one of the only, there may have been a couple other things, but it was one of the only, at least one of the biggest demos that was released this week. And definitely I want to encourage this kind of stuff from companies whenever possible. Even if all the feedback is not positive, I hope that the feedback is at least useful, and they can look at some of these problems on the way. For instance, of course, the performance, which needs a lot of work. So we'll see how that goes.
They did send out a survey for the game. So if you play it, do fill it out, be honest, and give Square-Enix your feedback. So it does definitely help developers a lot to get some good criticism.
Nomura wanted to create an angry man, and he may have created many inadvertently. But that's going to do it for this video. So thanks for chatting with me, Audi.
No problem.
And yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed the E3 coverage this week. And if you did, be sure to let us know. Ring the notification bell, follow us on Twitter, all that good stuff. And we will see you next time.